the beam falling. So we have to use this maneuver to bring it in line with the beam. Then we can use rotation if there is gross mass misalignment of the needle. Then we can use rotation to bring that in line. So this shows the various probe maneuvers which I have told. First is the pressure. Second is the alignment. Third is rotation. And fourth is tilt. Now after seeing the target, we have to plan the approach. So after seeing the image, we have to plan where we have to do our needling from which side and which are the structures which lie in the path. So we can avoid injury to that structures. Like in this image, we can see while giving supraclavicular plexus block, there is suprascapular nerve which lies in the path of the needle. So we have to see the structure lying in the needle path and avoid harm to that. Primum non nocere, which means to do no harm first, then do the further things. So we have to identify vessels and nerves in our pathway. For this also we have to be versed with the anatomy so that we can know which structures can lie in our pathway. We can apply color Doppler and pulse wave Doppler also to identify the structures before giving the block. And these structures can be displaced from the path by either by fluid doing hydrodissection, giving a little amount of 5% dextrose or giving the drug itself, so that it will displace the structure in the path away from the pathway, and then we can further guide our needle towards the target. Or either we can do needling, gentle tangential needling of the nerves lying in the pathway, that will, and then the nerve will roll away from the path. Now coming to the artifacts. What is artifact? Artifacts are actually the information that is visible in the ultrasound image that does not actually correlate with any anatomical structure. So artifacts which are present in one plane can they will be gone after we do our probe manipulation. When if it is an actual anatomical structure, it will not go after the probe manipulation. Artifacts can also be of different type. So I will be telling about some artifacts here. Acoustic shadowing. What is acoustic shadowing? So when the ultrasound image falls on a structure which is having a very higher attenuation coefficient, so the structure lying deeper to it appear very less echogenic or very dark. This is called acoustic shadowing. Like in this image, we can see in the supraclavicular region when we give block, there is first strip there. So below this, we can see only dark echogenicity. This is because the first strip is bone, which is a very strong reflector of the ultrasound waves. Also, when we give this supraclavicular rocks, we cannot see a lung or pleura below the ribs because of the high reflective property of the rib. So we have to careful not introduce our needle below the first rib, so that to avoid injury to the pleura. And sometimes this artifact can be helpful to us, like in central neuroaxial pocket, when we identify the acoustic shadowing of the lamina and the spinous process, which help us to identify the midline while performing the block. And the second is acoustic enhancement. So acoustic enhancement occurs, it is actually opposite of the acoustic shadowing. So acoustic enhancement occurs when there is a reason behind a weakly attenuating structure, like a vessel or a vein. Below that, the structure below that vessel will appear very bright than the adjacent tissues. We can confuse that structure with nerve sometimes, like in, so here in this picture we can see below the fluid or vessel there is very brightly bright tissue. So in this first image, this is the auxiliary brachial plexus block. So we can see this is auxiliary artery. Below that we can see a enhancement. This is usually confused with some nerve structure, but this may be due to the acoustic enhancement of the auxiliary artery. Then in the second picture, we can see the this is the infraclavicular block area. So we can see below the artery there is again an enhancement which we may confuse with posterior cord. So we have to confirm the that is it is a neural element or not. We can use peripheral nerve stimulation in such cases to confirm the neural structures. Then Doppler artifacts. When like I told already, when we keep probe perpendicular to the skin, there is no flow detection by the probe. So sometimes the structures which are actually a vessel show a dark colored structure in the ultrasound image. So we can confuse this with other tissues, but when the probe is tilted, it will show the actual movement of the blood. So if we want to confirm, you have to actually tilt the probe, reducing the angle actually. Then again, probe skin artifact. This occurs actually due to poor contact of the probe with the skin. So we should apply adequate gel and to remove this artifact. Then reverberation artifact. So it occurs when there is the back and forth movement of ultrasound waves between two strong reflectors. Like in this image, we can see when we introduce a needle which is going exactly parallel to the ultrasound probe or which is perpendicular to the ultrasound beams. So there will be reflection of the waves again and again. Like in the first, the wave will come with to the upper surface and it will go back. Then it will go to the inside lumen and it will go back. Then again there will be reflections again and again. So this will cause creation of the multiple lines. This is called the reverberation artifact. So to decrease this, we can either reduce the angle of the needle to less than 90 degree, or we can reduce sometime the Fargan to darken the further image. This effect is also seen with some tissues like prula and the rib. This reverberation effects only produces the comet tail effect, which we see below the pleura. Then this effect only produces the double barrel image or the mirror image artifact. When any vessel or any artery lies above any tissue of higher echogenicity like rib or clavicle, then a mirror image is produced below the rib of the same type. Like subclavian artery is duplicated below the rib also. So we have to be careful that don't go below the rim, because the actual image will be only above it. This is the same thing, I don't know. Then there is bayonet artifact. This is actually due to the difference in the travel speed of the ultrasound waves in different tissues. The ultrasound machine actually thinks that it is the speed of the ultrasound wave is similar in all the tissues, but this is not actually the case. It differs from the tissues to tissues. So when the needle passes through different tissues, there will be different speed, and the location of that, according to that speed, the distance travel will be there. So according to that, the image will be projected in the ultrasound image. So the needle may appear bent when it travels from one tissue to other tissue. That's all. Now I'll be handing over to Ankita.
Thank you, Anamika. Now we will be discussing about the needling techniques and deposition of the drug. It will be discussed by Dr. Ankita Mohta. She is a junior consultant in our department. Along with that, she is doing her Aura Fellowship. Over to you, Dr. Ankita.
So good evening, everyone. I will be continuing this, the topic which was going on, the basics of ultrasound in regional anesthesia. So as the scanning and the recognition of the sonoanatomy has already been discussed, I will be discussing the elements of the needle and the transducer handling that will contribute us to get a successful localization of the needle tip and to guide the needle to the target nerve. Along with that, I'll also be discussing the safe and the effective deposition of the local anesthetic around the target nerve. So when coming to the needling phase, the needle tip localization is generally essential for the efficacy and the safety. Successful localization of the needle is generally aided by the ability to process the series of the 2D image which we are getting in the ultrasound picture to in our brain as a 3D mental image, and then we will know, like a mental image, we'll get a 3D mental image of the image which we are seeing in the ultrasound, and then the needle, and along with that the anatomy, anatomical structures interaction. So likewise we can plan our block and the pathway, how we are going to do the block. Generally when we talk about needle, two things come to our mind. The first is visualization and the another one is localization. Somehow visualization and localization are not the same thing. As we know, the needles are really hard to see. So how can we maximize the needle visibility? When visibility of the needle, it generally depends upon the angle of insertion and also depends upon the needle gauge, then the bevel orientation, needle motion and test injections, and along with that echogenic modifications. So whenever the angle of insertion or the incidence angle is like, whenever the needle is parallel to the transducer, then we generally get the best picture of the needle throughout the time. And as like we go steep into the like when we go steep in when we go in a steep trajectory, then the result then the needle result then it results in the poor visibility of the needle. Likewise, when we use a large gauge needle like 18 or 19 gauge needle, then we get a better needle visibility. But then using a large gauge needle, it generally creates greater tissue trauma, and along with that, it causes discomfort to the patient. And in case by mistake, if we hit any vessel like vascular structures, then we can have major consequences due to large bore needles. So generally we use 22 gauge needles for ultrasound blocks here. And then I'll talk about bevel orientation and needle motions and test injections in the further slides. So coming to echogenic modifications, initially we used to use smooth metallic surface needles, and these needles were specular reflectors of the ultrasound waves. And when we used to go for like steep trajectory, then more number of the waves used to get reflected away from the transducer, then coming towards the transducer, because of which we used to get poor visibility of the needle. So nowadays, echogenic needles have started to come. So with these needles, they increase the reflection of the ultrasound waves and back to the transducer. And even if we go into the steep trajectory, then despite the trajectory, these needles maintain their echogenicity, thereby providing us a better needle visibility. So here in this picture, as I was talking, if the angle of insertion or the angle of incidence, if it is parallel or lies just below the transducer, then we'll see the best picture of the needle. And if we go a little bit deep or in a steep trajectory, the visibility of the needle becomes very poor. In this picture, we are using a echogenic needle, and here you can see the difference. Here you can actually visualize the needle very nicely. So it is better to use a echogenic needle. So in this picture, this A here shows a standard smooth metallic surface needle, which we used to use earlier. But because of poor visibility issues, we have now started using echogenic needles. Like they have a like unruly surface, not a smooth surface, which makes the visibility better. So coming to needle tip or needle beam alignment, which is generally we consider needle and the beam, ultrasound beam, its alignment as a very big challenge, because the width of a typical ultrasound beam is somewhere in between 1 to 3 millimeter, while the outer diameter of a 22 gauge block needle is somewhere around 0.7 millimeters. So getting both of these structures in an alignment is really a big challenge for newcomers like us. So for this, we can always go for optimization of needle beam alignments. So the first way how we can optimize our needle beam alignment is going through the ergonomics. Ergonomics generally help us out in two ways. Like it minimizes the operator fatigue, and it also improves the operator's ability to control and coordinate. And like as we manipulate both the structures, like we are manipulating the transducer along with the needle, and we are obviously while simultaneously looking at the ultrasound screen. Then the patient's bed height, it should be elevated so that we don't, the operator should not have to bend over so as to provide a block. And the operator's hand should always be braced on the patient so as to provide stability, or else if we have like extra gel over the surface of the skin of the patient, or if we have sterilium lying over it, then our hands can slip, and which can produce difficulty while providing a block. Then coming to the second phase of optimization, we can always use small transducer movements, which we had discussed earlier, like sliding, tilting, and rotation, so as to get a better like needle beam alignment. Generally, sliding is the best maneuver which is used so as to like align the US ultrasound beam and the needle tip. Tilting is not precisely used because it tends, as the arc subtended by a given angle of the tilt, it generally changes whenever we change the depth of the structure. When we change it, when it varies with the depth of the structure whenever we use ultrasound through it. Then rotation is necessary, as in case of rotation, if the needle and the beam, if they are tangential to each other, rather than being in a line, rotation can provide a better alignment of needle and beam, and by getting them in inline plane. So the recommendation for the transducer movements are, until and unless we are not sure where our needle is, we should not move the needle. We should only move the transducer, because movement of needle without localizing the position of the needle, or without the needle being visible, can produce hazardous effects. Then coming to the probe movements. So as to achieve an alignment between the needle and the US beam, we should always have smooth, small, controlled, and continuous movements. As we all know, it is almost impossible to achieve and maintain a perfect needle beam alignment. And it is also almost impossible to continuously visualize the needle and the tip. So a moving needle is always easier for us to see and guide ourselves, as both of our hands are continuously moving. So needle tip localization, it becomes a dynamic, challenging, and a multi-dimensional process. So in this video, you can see So in this picture, you can see a needle which is moving through the fascias, and it is visible to us in the eye, and the visibility is okay. Like we know where our needle is going. The next thing that we can do so as to optimize our needle alignment, and so as to know where our needle is, we can always keep the bevel part of the needle facing up towards the transducer. Because when the transducer or the ultrasound waves hit the bevel portion of the needle, they produce a double echo effect, and which helps us to identify the tip of the needle while doing ultrasonography. So in this picture, you can see, originally we'll think, as it is the end of the needle here on the ultrasound image, we'll think that this is the tip of the needle. But no, even if like we have the shaft of the needle under the ultrasonography, it will still appear, as it is an incomplete picture, it will appear to be to be seen as the tip of the needle. So that is why we need a permanent we need a permanent thing to know that this structure is the tip of the needle. So the double echo sign, the double echo thereby helps us to facilitate that and helps us in identifying the tip of the needle. Then coming to the indirect indicators of needle tip location. There are three indirect indicators. We can always go for tissue movement while localizing the tip of the needle. We can have the tactile feedback and hydrolocation so as to know the needle tip location. So so tissue movements like jiggling, wiggling of the needle and seesawing can help us to know where our tissue is located in case we are not able to see the needle in the ultrasound beam. So here you can see I'm putting the needle forward and along with that I'm taking it out. So this in and out motion can tell us where the needle tip is located. But this is not an adequate and a better thing because of this jiggling and the lower layers below the below the layer where I'm hitting the needle, those things also move along with that. So it does not give us a certain location or certain position of the needle where the needle is. The next thing is seesawing. It also helps us to know where the needle is, like where the tip of the needle is. So the movement is to and fro, up and down motion of the needle. Coming to the tactile feedbacks, initially when we used to do landmark guided PNB techniques, then we used to always appreciate the facial clicks and the pops which come while going through the trajectory of the needle. So here similarly, doing this ultrasound, in this ultrasound thing also, when we go for, when we are unable to localize our needle or whenever the needle crosses a fossa, then we can always correlate this tactile feedback with the visual cues of the needle advancement. So this can help us to localize the needle tip position. Then coming to hydrolocation. For newcomers like us, when we don't know where our needle tip is and hardly most of the time we are unable to get a perfect needle alignment and optimized needle tip location or a needle tip alignment, then we can start with hydrolocation. Hydrolocation actually involves rapid injection of small amount of fluid. It is generally in between 0.5 to 1 ml so as to confirm the needle tip position by both tissue movements and appearance of small anechoic pocket. This small anechoic pocket is because of the injection of the small fluid which we have pushed in. It aids us in opening up the space between the anatomical structures. This is also known as hydrodissection. This hydrodissection, it provides us an obstacle-free path for needle repositioning. Generally, we use either local anesthesia or 5% dextrose as the injectee. But using local anesthesia leads to the wastage of the drug, the amount of the drug that we have prepared for. So we will prefer 5% dextrose because 5% of dextrose, it preserves the motor response to, if in case we want to go for a neurostimulation, so that motor response is preserved when we are using 5% dextrose. So now coming to the needle insertion. Generally, when we talk about needle insertion, we have two approaches. The first approach is the in-plane approach, and the second approach is the like out-of-plane approach. So in this in-plane approach, the tip of the needle and the shaft of the needle, both structures, they come totally in alignment with the probe, and it also has a better visualization of the entire shaft and the tip of the needle when we go for a in-plane approach. So this is a big advantage of using in-plane approach. So when we start doing an in-plane approach, the first thing that we should do is we should start aligning the needle with the beam physically from the outside itself. So we should spend some time, we should look down, and we should just mark a place where the needle is placed just in the center of the ultrasound beam. And then after the insertion of the needle, we should look upwards in the ultrasound screen so as to localize our needle. Then we can use two maneuvers here. We can tilt our probe in case we are not getting a better or a hazy nerve, so as to get a clearer nerve during imaging. And in case we are not getting a proper needle visibility, then we can always slide our probe so as to get a better needle visibility. So here you can see like the visibility of the needle is very poor. So after making a few changes, after sliding the needle, the transducer forth and backwards, we can see the tip, we can visualize the needle in a better way. So even if after tilting, after sliding, if we are not getting a proper visibility, then we can always go for the heel-in maneuver. So in this heel-in maneuver, normally what we do, we give extra pressure on the corded end. So after giving extra pressure on the corded end, the cephalad end of the probe, this end of the probe, it gets lifted up. So what it causes, it increases the angle which is in between the ultrasound beam and the shaft of the needle. So this angle, when this angle increases, it generally increases it makes the needle better visible. So this is the last maneuver which we can try so as to get a better needle visibility in case of an in-plane technique. So when we are talking about this, then the question of needle insertion comes. So in this, we should always consider the depth of the target. If the target is shallow, then we can go for a 30 to 35 or 45 degree angle so as to hit the target of the nerve. But if the structure is a little bit deep, then we can always go for a steeper angle. Along with that, if we want a better we can always, instead of going at a steeper angle, we can always shift our needle and then we can go for a shallow angle. So when we go for a shallow angle, then we have to consider the length of the needle pathway to the target. As in a steeper angle, the length of the needle pathway, needle path to the target, it decreases. But whenever we take a shallow angle, so the length always decreases. So this can cause a little bit pain, or we will need a longer needle. So for the needle insertion, so we have to keep that in our mind. And then the trajectory angle, whatever angle we take, whether it be a steeper angle or a shallow angle, and whatever site of the skin insertion it is gonna be affecting our angle of our needle visibility. So we have to be a bit careful about that. So when we are doing a needle insertion, we should always place the target at the center of the screen. And then we should place an angle of trajectory or the skin incision or the needle incision point at a position through which our needle visibility becomes better. And the distance of the target, as I was telling it. Okay. As to summarize the in-plane dynamic techniques, whenever we are doing a probe movement, then our hand should always be small. We should always make small, continuous and sliding movements. And in case of needle hand, the another hand, we can always, so as to get an alignment, perfect alignment, we can go for jiggling, seesawing action. And when we get for a needle tip location, we can just probe the fascias so as to get the needle tip location. So now coming to the out of plane approach, here the long axis of the needle is placed at right angle to the plane of the ultrasound beam. So here we can only see the cross section of the nerve at any time. And as usual, sliding back and forth can help us visualize the tip better. So when it is difficult for us to, while it can be difficult for us to visualize the needle tip on the ultrasound screen, its depth is readily ascertained by indirect indicators, which we have discussed earlier, tissue movement and hydrolocation. So here in this out of plane technique, we just have one slight difficulty. The needle tip, just because it is just the cross section, so the needle tip and the shaft can look similar. So how can we differentiate between both of them? The needle tip, the shaft of the needle will produce an acoustic shadow, and the needle tip just will present as a hyperechoic white structure on top of the target. So that is how we can differentiate in between the shaft and the needle of the in an out of plane approach. So now coming down to the walk down approach, Pisui et al. Described that the walk down approach in an out of plane approach is in which the distance from the needle to the center of the probe was the same as from the probe to the target. Then he introduced the needle at an angle slightly less than the 45 degree. And he made sure that the first needle pass was superficial to the target structure. And simultaneously, he kept on making adjustments so as to walk down the needle to the target by increasing the incident angle during the subsequent next needle passes. So in this technique, he used several needle passes, which was a limitation of this technique. But he discovered that when it was best employed when the distance from the center of the transducer to the entry point, that is on the skin, was equal to the depth of the structure which we have below the transducer. Similarly, Chin et al., they also described a similar technique, but they used a steeper angle that was 75 degrees. And they also had to probe the person multiple times so as to get a perfect result. So that was the same, they also had the same limitations as the Suis et al. So this arc to technique came. This technique tells us to identify the target structure, general things like we have to identify the target structure, and then we have to keep the structure in the central position, and then whatever ultrasound settings we want, we have to optimize them, and then we have to determine, we have to measure the length from the skin surface to the target structure, and then simultaneously we'll have to measure the center of the probe to the needle entry site, the distance between both of them. So according to that ARCTOC formula, he discovered that if this is the transducer, here we place the transducer, and if this is the depth, or here is the structure, and like we are making a triangle. If this is our if this is our what do you call incision site, or this is our site of the needle insertion. So he came up with this formula that tan theta is equal to the depth of the structure along with the distance that is on the skin site. So we can use this formula to calculate the needle entry angle of the incidence. So similarly, he gave us three points. So if we choose the depth of the target, and the distance, in case the depth and the distance are equivalent, then the needle insertion angle will be around 45 degrees. And in case the depth and the depth of the in case the depth of the target structure and the distance, if the distance is half of the depth of the target structure, then the needle insertion point will be 60 degrees. Angle of incidence will be 60 degrees. And if the depth of the target and if the depth distance between the probe and the site is twice the depth, then the needle insertion point becomes very shallow, and somewhere the angle of incidence is estimated to be around 30 degrees. So in this process also, limitations of this technique was we were unable to visualize the needle the entire time, and it cannot accurately calculate the needle incident angle if we are using in regions between the transducer and if the region between the transducer and the needle entry is not flat.
Cover your mouth and nose with elbow while coughing and sneezing.
They tried to solve this problem by using a gel standoff so as to elevate the transducer level to the same level of the entry site. But even if after using this, the results were...
Just a minute, 2 minutes, we will stop announcement. Just a minute.
So as to summarize, whenever we are using a probe, while using a probe hand movement, we will always do the slide back and slide forth movement, so as for even for the alignment of the needle and the needle tip location. And while using the needle hand, we can do jiggling and wiggling, which is the side by side movement, so as to know the needle tip, and probing movement for the needle tip location and the alignment. So the advantages, as in case of a out of plane technique, the general advantages that we have been doing the same way in earlier, like in nerve stimulation or by palpation method, and the needle is generally the needle path is very short. Then in case of in plane technique, and we can always put catheters through along the same nerve path. And while using an in plane technique, the best advantage is the direct visualization of the needle. And the disadvantages are the same here, like we always can get a needle path where we won't know where the tip of our needle is without recognition. And similarly here also in plane also we can always get a false sense of security, because sometimes it's impossible to detect the needle tip correctly. So now coming to the third part of the technical performance, that is the safe and effective deposition of local anesthetic around the target nerve. So every nerve is generally enveloped by a facial envelope or a compartment. So what we have to do is we have to identify that compartment. So while giving the drug, or while after the needling is done, when we are proceeding for the deposition of the drug, we do not have to touch the nerve. We just have to enter the compartment and fill it up with the local anesthetic. So all the nerves are enveloped by a paraneural sheath. So what we have to do is we have to avoid forced contact with the nerves. So our aim will always be to enter the space between the facial layers, and therefore we have to target the fossa a little bit away from the nerve. Then as the needle tip is blunt and the fossa is tough, so we will get significant tenting over it. Along with that, we'll see the rolling of the nerve, which will make us sure that okay, we are not affecting the nerve, or we are not like hurting the nerve. We are not causing the nerve any injury. So we can always advance in a smooth controlled movement. So when we pierce the fossa, we'll get a visual pop. As the needle tissues which will go down will come back again to the original position. This will be accompanied by a tactile pop, which will feel while doing the needling. So the needle tip then lies generally below the targeted potential fossa envelope, facial envelope. So then what we have to do, we will have to withdraw the needle till the needle comes back to the potential space of the facial envelope. So then when as we are newcomers, we won't be able to place it perfectly in the same location in between the facial planes. So what we can do, we can start wherever the needle is, we can start with giving small boluses of like 0.5 ml of fluid so as to confirm the needle position. So as the needle is and tissue, and likewise we'll just pull the needle, we'll keep withdrawing the needle slowly and smoothly, and then till the needle needle reaches the potential space, and then the fluid will then the drug which we are giving will distend the paraneural space, and on further injections it will produce a significant spread around the nerve. So in case when we are doing the same techniques in small nerves, we do not have to reposition the nerve tip. Like the spread of the drugs occur normally in case of small nerves. So coming to this, this sonoanatomy picture shows the popliteal nerve in the mid-thigh region. So here what we have to do is, we should not enter the nerve, we should not enter the needle directly over the top of the nerve. We should bring the needle a little bit lateral to the nerve, and then enter the fossa, and after the fossa, we should deposit our drug instead of directly piercing the nerve. So this is a video where you can see it is the musculocutaneous nerve, and the needle is coming inside the musculocutaneous nerve. Without rolling of the nerve can be seen, without directly hitting the nerve, we will deposit the drug after a negative aspiration injection. So you can see the nerve moving away from the drug. So this is a perfect, safe technique for the nerve deposition, for the deposition of local anesthetics. So assessing the adequacy of spread, we have generally heard that after depositing the local anesthetic, we'll get a circumferential placement of the local anesthetic around the drug, which we also call it as a donut sign. But it is not generally necessary that we will get a circumferential spread, as the local anesthetic does not spread in just one plane. It can go above or it can go downwards. So as to check for the adequacy of the spread, we have to, after depositing the drug, we can always scan along the course of the nerve. Then we can see the spread of the nerve likewise. So how will we know that the drug that we have given is in the appropriate position and it's not an intraneural injection? Generally, the patient can complain of pain, and along with that, while injecting the needle, while injecting the drug, we'll feel a resistance to the injection. And along with that, we can always see expansion of the nerve. Like not around the nerve where the drug should actually be, expansion of that area where the drug should actually expand, but we will see the expansion of the nerve inside the nerve. So in this sonoanatomy picture, you are seeing a regular ulnar nerve before before injecting the local anesthetic. But when the needle comes and hit the nerves, and then we start deposition of local anesthetic, then here you can observe a swelling, which shows that the drug is somewhere hitting that the drug is becoming that it is becoming an intraneural injection. Along with that, after removing the needle from the nerve, you can see there is a swelling of the nerve along with a halo structure around the nerve. So this can either be an extra epidural or a subepidural or an intravesicular injection. So how do we know it is not an intravascular injection? We should always aspirate before the injection, and whenever studies have shown, when the pressure applied to the ultrasound transducer can occlude, pressure when we apply it on the transducer, it can occlude the venous structures. So whenever we do a negative aspiration of the blood doesn't come, so it becomes unreliable. we can, it can also show that if nothing is coming, then also we are not sure that it is not an intravascular injection. So we should always, in case we are not seeing a visible fluid spread and we cannot visualize our needle, or we are thinking that it is becoming an intravascular injection, we should always reassess and reassess the needle tip position, and then we should go for the the drug deposition again. So as to summarize, the general needling principles are: we should always approach the nerves at a nerve or vessel at a tangent. We should always advance our needle in a controlled manner. Hydrodissection of the path, to make a clearer path before, so as to advance our needle, helps a lot. And then we should look for tactile pops or visual bounce backs whenever the needle tip is not that prominent. We should always have a dynamic scanning and needling so as to locate the tip of the needle, and we should always look for the appropriate spread of the drug. So American Society of Regional Anesthesiologists, they gave us few recommendations. So the first is we should always visualize the key landmark structures, which include the muscle fascia, bone structures, and the blood vessels. And then we have to identify the nerve plexus in short axis, and we have to set the depth 1 centimeter below the target structure. And then we should always confirm that whether the anatomy is normal or it is a variation from the normal anatomy. Then we should plan for the safest and most effective needle approach. And we have to do all the following steps under aseptic needle insertion technique. Then we have to follow the needle under the real-time visualization as it is advanced towards the target. We should always have a secondary confirmation technique such as nerve stimulation. And when the needle tip is presumed to be in the correct position, then only we should, after an aspiration, we should inject a small volume of test dose. We should make necessary needle adjustments so as to get an optimal perineural spread of the regional anesthesia, and then maintain safety guidelines for frequent aspirations, monitoring patient response, and assessment of the resistance while injecting the drug. So to conclude, successful USG guided PNB peripheral nerve blocks can be described in terms of 2 core competencies. We should always know what we are looking at, and we should always know where the tip of our needle is. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankita. Over to Dr. Azam and Siva sir to carry on the rest of the proceedings.
Excellent presentation. I think there were a few questions. Siva sir is there, or? Okay, few questions from Amit to the students there. Why air is seen as a hyperechoic image?
Sir, air is having usually high acoustic impedance, and there is a difference between the tissues of body and air acoustic impedance. This leads to hyperechoic imaging of the air. Hyperechoic.
And what is anisotropy?
Sir, anisotropy is actually the angle dependency of a particular structure. When we are visualizing a nerve, there is a particular angle. When we move our probe, tilt our probe, then when the beam will fall perpendicular to that structure, only then the nerves can be visualized properly. So that angle dependency of the structure is called as anisotropy. And that I have understood.
Basically, to say it a single line, anisotropy is change in the echogenicity of the nerve due to probe manipulation. This is a one-line definition. A nerve which is actually hyperechoic, if your probe angle is 90 degree, it will appear as hyperechoic. But if you change the probe angle to 45 degree, that same nerve will appear as hypoechoic. So in one line, this is anisotropy. Your probe manipulation changes the echogenicity of the nerve. So that is anisotropy.
To the fellows, this question is to the fellows. What is the one example what Ritesh was explaining? Where do you see that?
Popliteal sciatic
Huh.
nerve cell normally.
Yeah, that's the one. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, okay, first, congratulations to both the presenters. It was really very nice and extensive talk. It really feels good to see such an amount of information coming out from fellows. It feels great and proud. The one suggestion is we have, because the subject is very vast and we don't know where to start and where to end, and the time is limited. So always you have an objective to begin with. You may not be able to cover everything. You can't do justification. So what is the logical way is you tell in the beginning of the presentation itself, one or two slides. I am going to cover up only these aspects. So that when I visualize, I know this is the direction in which you are going to flow. These are all the areas you are not going to touch. So that it will give a big leverage to you. You have a time to spend where I wanted to spend. So this is one I wanted to stress upon. It is not about the subject. The way your presentation makes more objective and impressive. You define your objectives of the presentation. I'm going to talk about only these aspects in about 20-30 minutes, so that the audience will know that this is what I can expect from this presentation. That's one. Because very extensive information you have given, that's really great. But when you have a limited time, how to make your presentation more effective, you clearly describe your objectives to begin with, and then do justification for that. That is one thing. So organization of your content is the second very good thing that I've observed is your descriptions are really good. The animations, the content, whatever you're trying to explain, especially the needle, the facial where you have to click. Have you downloaded those images, or have you drawn that? Where the needle tip has to go, either 3 o'clock or 9 o'clock position, and drug deposit.
No, sir, they are downloaded, sir.
Okay, right. And I mean, that's okay. You have to get the material which will express what you wanted to tell. That looks very nice and great. Similarly, the axial lateral resolution, those images, the attenuation depth, all those things are really, I mean, good that your diagram reflects your content effectively. And then the third one is regarding this of plane needling technique. The dynamic needle tip tracking. There are two aspects are there. One is a walk down technique.
Yes, sir.
Actually, I don't know about the other view, but commonly what we are doing is a dynamic needle tip tracking more than a walk down. We will walk down to certain length, but we cannot walk down all the way down to the target. What we will do is we will walk down to certain length. After that, we will do a dynamic tracking. Dynamic needle tip tracking, nothing but your target is here, your needle is approaching. In the walk down technique, you have to pull out and then direct. You have to pull out and then, isn't it or not? Yes. The ultrasound beam is static, only your needle is walking along the path of ultrasound beam. In a dynamic needle tip tracking, you come to a certain length. After that, I will tilt the probe. As I advance, I will tilt. As I advance, I will tilt. So that I will reach the target along with the needle tip. Both the things will be moving. Both the ultrasound beam as well as needle continue to move. So visualize practice. As you grow up, commonly what we are practicing now is half the way we come through the walk down. After when you come closer to the target, you do the dynamic tip tracking. So that is how we practically logically do. So the dynamic needle tip tracking is one that you have to add.
Okay.
So that is regarding the needle localization and practical suggestion. The other one regarding the probe movement and the angle of inclination. See, basically, what the part maneuver is, once the ultrasound wave goes into the tissue, it can either reflect, refract, or it can get completely absorbed. So we have no control over it. We can't dictate the ultrasound beam to come back to the probe. So what we can do is, by doing this part maneuver, what you are trying to basically achieve is you get your angle of insolation close to 90 degrees. So that when you come to target to 90 degrees, the reflection will be the maximum. So all your entire effort in ultrasound guided regional anesthesia is handling your probe in such a way that you try to get the angle of inclination to 90 degrees. If anybody asks what you're basically trying to do with your probe, all your manipulations, the one single point is you are trying to get your angle of inclination close to 90 degrees to your target. What is that ideal angle? You don't know, because the structure can go from up and down, it can curve round. So you cannot prescribe any particular single degree, the 45 or 30 or 90, you can't do that. So you have to move the probe, either slide, tilt, rotate, all the maneuvers you do in such a way that you will get your angle of insertion close to 90 degrees. You can ask me, sir, how do you know that your angle has come to 90 degrees? You cannot know the angle. When your image is optimal, that indicates your angle of inclination is close to 90 degrees. That is what it means. So you have to move your probe in all the four directions. That is what the path maneuver is. While you're trying to do, when your image is optimal at the screen, when you do this movement consciously, you will get that image optimal. At that point of time, what you're doing is your angle of inclination is close to 90 degrees. That's what it is.
Yes,
These are all the two things I wanted to place. Otherwise, it's extensive, good presentation. And thank you so much for Ritesh for, interesting these fellows, and it's really good. Thank you.
So there were some more questions from Amit, from Vaishali ma'am.
There are a lot of questions in the post. I think
Yeah.
Vaishali madam also,
Yeah. What
and
is it?
Ritesh, and as madam suggested, now slowly what we have to do is we have to download our AORA guidelines and protocols.
The septic protocol is there, but the safety protocol we have not uploaded, ma'am. President ma'am.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just.
It's not there. We decided, but it is not still uploaded. Safety protocol is there. Septic asepsis protocol is there, but the traffic which we had decided, it's still not there.
So I understand. Slowly now, we have to. I also know that it is not there. We have to, as a group, all these common practices. We have a fellows. We will give them the stepwise approaches so that they can adapt it. They can talk about it. Which instead of following somebody else, we can make it our own, and we know that. That's my suggestion as well. And exactly, madam said the same.
I think there was one question from madam asking, President madam, asking that can air be ever used by us in ultrasound?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so all the time we are thinking air as an enemy. Can you tell in any one place where enemy is our friend, where we can use that enemy to locate something?
Not too very safely.
Yeah, not too very safely.
Air can be used.
Can air be
used in ultrasound?
It can work as a contrast for you.
माइक्रो बबल्स इंजेक्शन अगर हम दें टिप्नो के लोकेशन के लिए.
Location of what?
Needle.
Yes.
Okay, what do you locate with air in your daily practice? Where do you inject air? Where do you locate? What space do you locate with air? I don't locate it with air, but what a general anesthesiologist locates with air? We run away from air everywhere, but here we locate it with air. So if you have put in an epidural catheter and you cannot see the tip of that catheter, then you can cheat by putting in 1 or 2 ml of air and see where it blows up. In children also you could do it. Or if you have put a sciatic catheter in an adult and you have lost it, then you can actually cheat by putting 1 or 2 ml of air and see it blow. It just lights up like a star there.
Okay.
Hence, you
So
can
the
quietly use it. Don't tell this to everybody.
So catheter tip location, when you lost your catheter tip, you don't know where it is. First, you have to try to locate with hydrolocation, because you know that the air is going to distort our image.
Start the image.
You are trying to locate it with hydrolocation, you are not able to identify it, you don't know where it is. So then this is by injecting a one, you see where that spark comes. So
Amit, did you
locating
have
the
this in mind? Sorry. Did you have this in mind, Amit, when you have put this question, how to confirm catheter tip on ultrasound?
Yes, madam. Yes.
This is one. Then second commonly is when you're doing a central line venous cannulation, bubble contrast. When you don't know where it is, that is what you said is right. That is a bubble contrast. So this is a known technique used by a cardiologist or any vascular people when they know whether the catheter is inside the vessel. If you just agitate, saline with a little bit of air and inject, you can see that very clearly. Or you can, especially neonatal cannulation, where you cannot identify it, you scan the heart and then inject the bubble contrast. You can see the bubbles in the heart, so that you will be very sure that my catheter has gone to the right place. So these are all the two areas: the bubble contrast for venous location, and it is in the right place. That's one thing, and then the catheter location in the regional anesthesia after you are using hydrolocation, where you can't identify that place.
Very
These are the two areas where you use
So there was one more question from Amit. What is a piezoelectric effect?
Sir, it is the generation of electric charge upon applying any mechanical pressure to an object. So there are certain piezoelectric metals or substances which have this property, which are used in our probes to convert the ultrasound waves into electrical energy.
So what is a piezoelectric effect and what is a converse piezoelectric effect?
Piezoelectric effect is the conversion of the ultrasound waves or the mechanical ultrasound waves into electrical energy, and the reverse is conversion of generation of electrical energy is the piezoelectric activity. No? So reverse is the opposite of that, conversion of electrical energy into the mechanical ultrasound waves.
Yeah.
And other question was from Amit was isosceles triangle principle.
Yes, sir. So whenever we have a structure, like we have a in and out of plane technique, whenever we have a target structure, so the distance from the transducer to that target structure, and then if we take the same equivalent distance from the transducer to the skin insertion point, then the line joining, then the line joining the skin insertion insertion of the needle site to the target. So that makes an isosceles triangle.
And what are the different techniques to use to prevent nerve injury while performing ultrasound guided blocks? This is very important.
How can we prevent a nerve injury?
What are the different steps or techniques used to prevent nerve injury while performing ultrasound guided blocks?
We have to we should not approach the nerve directly. Tangential approach of nerve should be we have to approach the nerve tangentially instead of using directly hitting the nerve. And it is always better if we hit the fossa above the nerve, like from a little bit distance, instead of hitting the nerve in directly hitting the nerve. So whenever we are when we are planning to deposit the drug, we should always aspirate. In case the patient complains of pain or we are seeing a spread of the drug inside the nerve or a swelling around the nerve, then it is an intraneural injection. When we are using a large beveled needle, then the chances of short beveled needle, then the chances of injuring the nerve is more, I guess. Something
So
about the beveled,
tip,
sharper. tip hits, tip causes injury to the nerve.
Okay, so short
It
dose.
should
Right. What is the other monitor that you use to?
pressure monitoring device we can use, sir.
Then it is more than 20 psi. Then it is sure that intraneural injection has happened. And if we are using a PNS guided, if low voltage in less than 2 millivolt also, if we are seeing 0.2 millivolt also we are seeing, then it is sure that our needle is inside the nerve.
Amit, you're happy with this answer?
Yes,
Something even more simpler. Keep the same syringe in your hand most of the times. Don't change the syringe. If it's 10 ml, use 10 ml all throughout to your days.
We know the resistance.
Yes. Don't keep changing the syringe size.
There was a question from President Ma'am. What is the minimum volume to detect intraneural injection?
0.5 to 1 ml. Most probably that can cause swelling. I'm not sure.
Most reported is
The
3 ml.
sensitivity of ultrasound is quite precise. It can pick up to 0.5 ml if you inject it.
Yeah, 0.3 is what I heard last. Yes.
So, and Ankita, I forgot the name. What is it? Ankita. Yeah, fine. See, now while you're scanning in the image screen, you have some of numbers like TIS, MIS. Do you have any idea what those are?
So TIS is thermal index of the soft tissue, and I don't know about MIS.
Okay, that's a mechanical index.
He knows
So,
this much, you have to give her the credit. Huh?
Thank you.
yeah.
You
So,
see, they both are pretty synergistic, like they're working in combination.
yeah. So now you are looking at that number. Is that got any meaning to us? Is there any concerns? I mean,
Sir, actually, that when we are doing ultrasound imaging of any embryo or in a pregnant patient, then that should not cross a set limit. That is the concern for us. In normal imaging, when we are using for regional anesthesia, that is not of much concern. But if you are using that ultrasound imaging for pregnant patient or for some embryo imaging, then that should be below a certain limit. I don't exactly remember the value, sir, but that is there.
do you know what is the thermal index? What does it tell us? Do you have any idea what it means? Is that
Heat,
heat generated by the
transducer.
ultrasound waves.
yes, when you are scanning a target for a longer time, the ability of the ultrasound energy to increase the tissue temperature, that is what is denoted by a thermal index. If it is 1 means it increases the tissue temperature by 1 degree Celsius. You have to understand, if the display is 1, that means you are increased the tissue temperature by 1 degree Celsius inside at the area of focal point. Suppose I know that obstetric, it is more concerned, it is well established fact, but we don't know the outcome of our scanning in the brachial plexus or all the other structures. We are doing for a lesser time, but as the time goes, we may see some effect also. Right now, we don't. Suppose you are scanning the brachial plexus to get the 10 minutes, you are trying to put a catheter. You just have a look at what is your thermal index. Sometimes at the end, it can reach to 0.8, 0.9. You may not have it. If you start looking at it, you will see. When you're continuously focusing on some target for a length of time, the thermal index will slowly increase. The thermal index is nothing but the temperature is progressively increasing in that particular focal zone. We may not know the untoward side effects this time, but it may have some unknown effect. So the thermal index, you have to be watchful. The tissue temperature will increase as you scan for a longer time with an intense focus.
May I add one thing, sir? Thermal index, yes. Nowadays, with ultrasound H2 machine and higher, they have this preset for ophthalmic use, where when we are putting the probe over the vitreous for optic nerve sheath diameter monitoring, when we select ophthalmic setup, they bring down it to near zero. Take that specifically, yeah.
Yeah, it involves the target area also.
Correct.
That it is so much concern in that area.
Yeah, because in vitreous cavity, we really want it to be near zero. And whenever we are doing optic nerve sheath diameter, it is bringing down to 0. So it is not good idea to put a probe directly over eye and without that setting. So even today we are using a scan for ophthalmic use. Most of the ophthalmologists are still using a scan because they are using minimum, that single piezoelectric crystal producing a graph. When we use more number of piezoelectric crystal, more heat. So that's the problem. So newer machines are with these newer advances like that.
Good.
One more question from my side. Why you are not able? Air has got a very less acoustic impedance. Air has got a very less acoustic impedance. So why don't you visualize the structure when you don't have good amount of gel between your tissue and the probe? The acoustic impedance of air is very less. It means the ultrasound waves should easily pass. Why you are not able to visualize if you don't put a good amount of gel between your transducer and the patient?
That it is because of that mismatch between the tissue and the air acoustic impedance. That difference in the acoustic impedance.
So what's that?
Ultrasound waves are not getting reflected. Like
Correct.
Yeah.
it does not get reflected back.
The reflection will increase if you have more difference in the acoustic impedance.
Yes.
They don't travel through air.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
So that is why you need a medium called gel is what
Exactly.
asked you.
Yeah.
So what is the best way to increase the visibility of the nerve, or different technique, or the easiest technique?
To increase the visibility of the nerve, we can do the tilting maneuver so as to
That's
see
my
the nerve.
question. Yeah.
मतलब visibility nerve का कैसे improve कर सकते हैं?
अगर डाउट है तो थोड़ा सलाइन दे देना, नर्व क्या हो जाएगा, नर्व दिखना शुरू हो जाएगा.
क्या सर?
Injection of
Hydrodissection. Okay.
That's the easiest. I think
And similarly, I mean, some
and excellent mentoring by Ritesh. Sorry, Shiva. Sorry, you're saying.
no, we can organize this content into two aspects. One is image acquisition and then image optimization. So you can clinically make it like for acquiring image, all the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then for optimization, you make certain manuals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. By changing all the information now you have put up, you can put into these categories, which will make as you do the scan, how these informations will be useful. You've collected extensive material that you've described, but organization of these information in this manner, it will become more effective. What you wanted to communicate. Yes, it is very nice, Ritesh. Anything?
Okay, I think
No, I think
shall we wrap up? Amit, anything more?
Ritesh bhai, Amit has some 4 MCQs. If you guys have time, maybe just 4.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so these are the simple 4 MCQs which I am going to share. So right from question number 17. So other fellows also can answer them in the chat box. So first question is regarding ultrasound for regional anesthesia. Which of the following statement is false? Ultrasound used for clinical purpose is of the frequency of 1 to 20 kilohertz. B mode is the most common mode used in regional anesthesia. It is based on piezoelectric effect. The speed of ultrasound waves in tissue is fairly 1540 meter per second. So Anamika and Dr. Avantika can answer. Which is false? Others can also participate. through chat box.
So maybe D, maybe it is not.
I mean, you can zoom the question 20, Amit. It is on the lower half of the screen. You can make it center of the screen.
Okay.
You can scroll up. The question number 20 is very low. Bring it to the middle of the screen.
I am right now on question 17.
यही होगा 1 to 20 नहीं
17.
So you
होगा.
are on 17.
Yes,
Okay, okay.
I am on 17.
I was reading the 20.
No, I am on question 17. Only 4 questions. So
यही
17
होगा.
question regarding ultrasound, which is false.
Okay, okay. Okay. False.
A 2 to 20 होगा बस है और तो कुछ नहीं है.
So anyone from the group?
Sir, A.
Yes. Why A?
Sir, the frequency usually lies between 2 to 14 hertz. 2 to 14, 2 to
20 रहता है.
13 seconds कर दिया 2 to
Is it a kilohertz, or you see that it's a megahertz or kilohertz?
megahertz. Sorry.
So it is written as a kilohertz.
So it's not kilohertz, it is megahertz. It is medical ultrasound is with megahertz. So you have to read all these carefully. Now we'll move to question number 18. Yeah, sir, can add.
Ankita, now in this we can just share two information. Do you have any idea why our hearing capacity limited to 2 to 20 hertz, 2 to 20 hertz? Do you have any idea? Beyond that we can't hear. Less than 20 and more than 20,000.
Sir, can you?
Now we can hear between 20 to 20,000 hertz sound, isn't it? Frequency. We
Yes,
can't
sir.
hear more than that. We can't hear less than that. The animals will have a different bandwidth, isn't it? Do you have any? What limits that? Do you have any idea?
Impedance की वजह से है.
Sorry, okay, that's fine. Our eardrum, isn't it?
Yes,
Basically,
sir.
when the sound comes, our eardrum has to vibrate. These signals only has to be picked up by the nerve. Our eardrum capacity is limited to it can vibrate only to that frequency. Less than 20, it doesn't pick up. More than 20,000 hertz, it can't vibrate. So that our the sensory function limitation is only that. Our eardrum is the limiting factor for us. That is number one. And 1,540 meter per second is ultrasound considered. That is the speed with which the ultrasound wave travels across the tissue. What is the disadvantage of that? Do you have,
So that causes many artifacts in the image.
Many?
Artifacts can be produced because of that, sir. Because actually the velocity differs in different tissues. So the image projected will be different than the actual image. It will locate the.
But ultrasound consider it is the same.
It as a.
What is the clinical outcome of it? Where you will encounter the problem because of that?
So like deeper. Yes, sir. When the tissues are deeper and when जो needle वगैरह देखते हैं ना sir, sometimes the needle visualization can be hampered because of that, sir. When the needle passes from one tissue to different tissue, the needle may be seen as bent because of that.
Oneness needle can be look like bent, but we know that needle is straight, so that is not going to do any harm. But when you see some structure is deep at 5 centimeters, when your needle is going to that target, in the ultrasound you are seeing that you have reached that target. You understand what I mean? Your needle is, in the ultrasound image, it looks like you have reached the target, you are touching the target, but actually in the real situations, it may not be there.
Yes,
You
sir.
may be aspirating, blood is not coming. It is because your vein is much deeper than what you are seeing in the ultrasound. This is what you have to get in your mind, because the ultrasound calculates speed based on some assumption. The assumption is ultrasound travels at a constant speed across all the tissues, but in reality it is not like that. So whenever you are encountering that the target what you are seeing, you are looking like you have reached, still you are not on the target. It's not stimulating the sciatic nerve. But in the ultrasound image, you are into the sciatic nerve, but you are not stimulating it. Sometimes the sciatic nerve may be a little more deeper. That is why you have to manipulate to get it. This happens whenever you are targeting a more deeper structure where the depth inequality may be more evident. This is where we practically sometimes you think that it is the dura is at 5 centimeters, but it may not be there at 5 centimeters. It may be at 5.3 or 5.4. That's the implication. Okay, right. Fine.
Okay, so we will move to next question, question number 18, regarding ultrasound. Regarding ultrasound waves, which of the following statement is false? Okay, so wavelength is inversely related to frequency. High frequency waves have deeper penetration. Linear array probes produce higher frequency. Ultrasound curved array probes produce lower frequency. I think this is easier one.
Yes, sir. B is the answer.
Correct. Now moving to question 19. Regarding ultrasound transducers, which of the statement is false? Linear array probes have best axial resolution. Curved array probes produce sectoral images. Phased array probes are the best for echocardiography. J-shaped probes are most suitable for elderly patients.
D. J-shaped probes are used in children, like infants and neonates may be used J-shaped probes.
Yeah. Sir, Shiva sir, you want to add something about axial and
Yeah, lad, I was reading that question first. Even you can read to them. Fellows can answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Now the last question, 20th. I am on the 20th question. Which of the following statement is true? Axial resolution is the ability of the system to display small structures side by side, same depth, as separate from each other. B. Lateral resolution is the ability of the system to display small structures along the axis of the beam as separate from each other. C. Attenuation is the sum total of reflection, refraction, scattering, and absorption. And D. Attenuation is inversely proportional to beam frequency.
D. No, directly proportion होता है.
C होगा. Attenuation is the total of reflection, refraction, scattering, and absorption. Because
what is about A and B?
A will be same depth is lateral, and like side by side is lateral resolution, and ability to side by side is lateral, and the ability at the same plane, when you are able to differentiate between two two objects, then it is axial resolution.
Correct. And what about the D option?
So attenuation is directly proportional to beam frequency. The higher the frequency of the beam, it will be more attenuate. There will be more attenuation.
All right.
Yeah, it is very nice, Amit. Now what we do, we'll make it as routine. Now the fellows has to not only tell the answer, they have to explain the other objects as well. So in one question we will have answer for both. I think in a very shorter time it will enhance the ability of understanding to us. So that's really good.
Correct. Ankita has explained about acoustic shadowing. So I'm just adding this one more bonus question. Which of the following artifact is produced during ultrasound scanning? Post-cystic enhancement, reverberation, acoustic shadowing, all of the above.
All of the above.
Listen to the question carefully. Which of the following artifact is produced during ultrasound scanning? Post cystic enhancement, reverberation, acoustic shadowing, all of the above.
A.
You are doing only ultrasound scanning. You are not doing anything else. So which of these is happening?
Acoustic shadowing तो होता है. Acoustic
shadowing तो हाँ. Reverberation के लिए.
Sir, C.
Why you think it is C?
There are some structures like reefs or Prura can produce acoustic setting. That will be there even if you are not doing during ultrasound scanning. They will be there.
Correct, correct. So what you are saying is right. Reverberation is when you have that needling,
Needle.
and
It is post-cystic enhancement.
what is post-cystic?
Why not all of the above? Even when you are scanning the pleura, I mean, you may have the reverberation artifact.
Yes, sir.
I mean, these are all the post-cystic enhancement is also one artifact. It's not the reality. Reverberation also is an artifact.
Yes, sir.
Acoustic shadowing also an artifact. Why not
And the
be
post-cystic
all of the
enhancement is
above?
also there during scanning arteries and blood vessels. That will be there also.
I was thinking it is D, all of the above.
I was also.
Okay. So
Okay.
we will accept it because expert opinion is here. So
No. I'm
Sorry,
also just.
I
think the answer should be all of the above.
Yes, sir.
okay, that this closes the quiz part.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
Any other question if somebody is having? So we have posted you some questions in the chat box just to stimulate you. When you will have exam, any of these questions can be asked, and depending on, so we tried covering most of it. Excellent, Dr. Anamika and Ankita.
Thank you.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Sure,
you.
Amit, I mean, we will make it a routine that 5 objective questions which is very relevant to the topic that is being discussed, so that it will be nice to discuss at the end, so that fellows also will be knowing that
Something is
there will be a
coming.
question at the end which is
Okay.
covering the topic of discussion. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you everyone.
Thank you and
Thank you.
congratulations. Okay,
Thank
good job.
you. Bye bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Be
Thank you.
safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.